Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Britt, Kanawha, West Hancock Athletics Podcast. Dan Kroll here, and I'm excited to say that this is episode 50 of the podcast. Never thought a year and a half ago, doing the first one with Kevin Sanger, that I'd be doing 50 of these, and it's been a lot. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm excited for this one with Sarah Swanson. How you doing tonight, Sarah?
Doing well. Glad to be here. 50's pretty cool. But yeah, looking forward to chatting with you tonight.
Yep, it'll be a lot of fun. Sarah and I went to high school together. She was a year below me in school, and so I got to see her athletic career up close and personal during at least three of those seasons. So, yeah, and I want to thank the sponsors. I have 18 sponsors for tonight. I always tell my guests before I hit record kind of how much money is coming into the Sanger Fund for this episode, and it's a lot tonight, just like it is most nights. So it's always exciting and worth our time. So I want to thank the Britt Car, Truck, Bike, and Tractor Night Cruise, Ewing Funeral Home and Monument Company, Daniels Auto Collision, Nick Schmidt, Sidetrack Lanes, Levi Dawn Trucking, Miller and Sons Golf Cars, the Britt Vet Clinic, the Original Saw, an anonymous donor gave in honor of the late Coach Robin Drake, Jay Hiscox of State Farm Insurance, First State Bank, Eric Kroll of Ag Performance in Buffalo Center, Kelly Real Estate, Anna Gritters, White Barn Picket Fence, In His Image Photography, Window World of Mason City, and the Dave Fink Memorial Fund. And remember, all that sponsorship money goes to the Sanger Legacy Fund, and that fund is in honor of the late great Coach Bob Sanger and his wife, Mrs. Linda Sanger. Please consider giving or continuing to give to the Sanger Legacy Fund. You can do that at sangerstrong.com, or you can do that through me, and I'll get the money there. If you'd like to sponsor the podcast, let me know. The Sanger Legacy Fund goes towards the new Hall of Fame. We help fund that. Scholarships for seniors. We help with any athletic or activity program that needs funding for any new equipment or championship memorabilia for when they do well in the postseason. So lots of good reasons to give to the Sanger Legacy Fund. All right, 5 episodes go on the podcast. On episode 45, I talked to a Hall of Famer, Lois Stuflick Johnson. 15 episodes ago, in episode 35, Duane Cook, who would be a relative of Sarah's. I think you said it was your mom's
My mom's cousin.
your mom's cousin. So there we
Yep.
go. Duane Cook, two-time state champion wrestling. 30 episodes ago, in episode 20, was Kanawha football coaching legend Rod Barkema. And then 45 episodes ago, in episode 5, was the 1973 football team. We're going to get to some sponsors, and then Sarah is ready to go. All right, the Original Saw Company is the leader in American-made radial arm saws, cross-cut power saws, and beam saws. They also offer accessories such as extension tables, measuring and clamping systems, dust shrouds, and miter saw stands. Original Saw's product line includes items for both the hobby woodworker and complex automated industrial settings. Sister company Williams and Hussey Machine and Tool manufacture and sell molders and accessories for making custom and stock moldings and trim. The Original Saw Company provides, through Jones Machinery, a preventative maintenance and repair service of wood and metal working machinery throughout the Midwest. Want to know more about the Original Saw Company? Check them out at originalsaw.com. Like to mention Michael and Brianne Ewing of Ewing Funeral Home and Monument Company, locations in Britt, Kanawha, Clarion, Belmont, and Dowse. Mike is a 1998 West Hancock grad, and his family has been privileged to care for the communities of Britt and Kanawha since 1977. You can find him online at ewingfh.com or on Facebook, or give him a call at 843-3839 or 762-3211. That's Ewing Funeral Home and Monument Company. Thanks to Mike and Brianne. They've been with me since day one almost. My next sponsor, also a long-term sponsor, is Daniels Auto Collision in Charles City. Owner Jason Daniels is a 1990 West Hancock grad. Whether you need a minor fix-up or complete collision repair, Daniels Auto Collision is North Iowa's premier auto body shop. They'll have your vehicle back on the road looking better than new. With over 30 years of experience and all major insurances accepted, why take your chances with anyone other than Daniels Auto Collision? Call them at 641-220-3805. Email them at danielsautocollision@gmail.com or check them out at danielsautocollision.com. One more sponsor here, and we're going to get started. That's Kelly Real Estate. Has been in business for over 60 years, starting with Paul Kelly. Paul handed the business off to Steve and Deanna in 2017. They've enjoyed getting to know the business and the community by selling real estate property. It's a great way to get to know everyone in the community and enjoy small town living. Kelly Real Estate, this last year or 2 years ago now, I need to update my notes, added Rachel Swanson to their team and also their office manager, Nora Clark. So if you're looking for just the right starter home, the perfect forever home, or a unique fixer-upper, or even a transition into your retirement home, call Kelly Real Estate at 843-4102. All right, here we go. Thanks again, Sarah, for coming on here. I tabbed you as one of the best female athletes West Hancock's ever had. 17 varsity letters, multiple all-state tabs under your name. I just think that what you did in your career was pretty great and thought this would be a good episode to have. So thanks again.
Yeah, that might be a bit of a stretch, but I appreciate it.
Might as well just call this the humble podcast because I think everybody I've had deflects any praise off to others and doesn't
Yes.
think they're as good as they were, but you were a good one. So first of all, what's up? How's your family? How's the job? How's life up there?
Yeah, well, I live over in Fayette. I work at Upper Iowa in the athletics department. I've been here for just over 4 years now. Had a couple different roles while I've been here, but started on the operations facility side of things, and then recently transitioned over. I'm currently the senior associate athletic director for external affairs, and then the senior women administrator here. So I get to do some fundraising and external relations, alumni relations. So yeah, enjoy it over here. As for my family, they're all great. I was home 2 weekends ago. Got to see the GHV and West Hancock game, and then stuck around for the Hall of Fame event. Got to see my dad inducted with the 1971 wrestling team. So it was good to see them. And then we also had family pictures while I was home. And let me tell you, taking pictures with two-year-olds is quite an experience. So the nieces and nephews have definitely added some excitement to our family.
I have two boys that are a little older now, but when they were that age, it was like you get this perfect family picture. But if people could see the before and the after of the perfect picture, it's even better because it's like parents threatening children and throwing candy at them and taking
Yes.
away everything they like. And yeah, I've
Yeah.
been there,
So
done that.
White Barn Picket Fence, one of your sponsors, they actually, Amanda took our pictures, and
Yep.
yes, we've seen a couple shots, and they're much better than I expected.
Yeah.
She does amazing work, so I'm excited to see the rest. But yeah, it was fun to be home, fun to experience the first Hall of Fame. I know you were kind of involved with that, and it was pretty cool to be back.
Yep, that was a lot of fun. And I was telling Sarah off camera that I'm now on that committee as well. I wasn't before. I just got asked to the MC, but I decided I'll help out. I thought it was a good time and had a great time. And there's literally hundreds of people we can induct into that Hall of Fame in the future. So
Yes, with all the championship teams and this like just outstanding athletes, Britt, Kanawha, West Hancock has had, it's surprising that we haven't done something sooner. But
yeah,
I'm glad it got going. Glad to see it grow, and will be fun to watch over the years to come.
yep. And speaking of your dad, I'm writing that book right now, and I'm on that 1971 season. My goal for the last 2 days has been to do the sectional, district, and state tournament, and I just busy and tired. So my goal tonight, while this is loading, is to finish that up. So I've typed up your dad's name quite a bit lately. He was
So
not
he
too
was,
bad.
yeah, no, he was, yeah, I think he had a pretty good career. He loves to talk about wrestling, that's for sure. And I know he loved getting to see his old teammates, and it was a pretty cool experience for him.
Yeah.
He's a really humble guy, but he enjoyed that. So
Yeah. Did it hurt a little bit that his sons played basketball?
yes, I would say yes. I think it hurt him a lot. I would say out of the three of us, if one of us was going to be a wrestler, it probably would have been me, not my brothers. But yes, I mean, he supported us. He never pushed them to wrestling. I mean, they did some youth and junior high wrestling, but I think he knew they were going to be basketball players from the beginning. So
yeah, that'll happen. So, well, speaking of your career, we're going to start with some softball here. And the reason I started with softball is I just thought it was neat. You were a 5-time all-conference selection, which is cool in Iowa because we play summer softball. And that way, if you're an 8th grader going into your freshman year, you can play high school softball, and you did. And you were honorable mention that year at shortstop, which is crazy that, shortstop's kind of that main defensive position. But in my research, and I went to high school with these people, so it didn't take a lot. Morgan Shields, Holly Bergman, Tasha Johnson, Kelly Wagner, were also on the all conference team that summer. This was 2002 for reference. What do you remember about jumping into a varsity sport before you'd ever taken a high school class?
Oh, well, I would say it was terrifying in a lot of ways. Some of those names you mentioned were intimidating to me at that time. After I got to know them, not at all. Great
Yeah.
people. But yeah, being an eighth grader, it was scary. I was also, beyond excited to get the opportunity. I remember Coach Boozman on a Friday night. I can't remember who he played, but we finished up a Friday night game, and he's like, "Hey Swanson, I want you to ride the bus tomorrow and join us for the Lake Mills tournament," which is always one of the first tournaments of the year, and I was just scared to death. But it was great. Obviously, it was a huge adjustment going from junior high softball in the fall, which doesn't even exist anymore, to varsity softball just 6 or 7 months later. At the time, my freshman, sophomore, junior years, there was some outstanding pitchers in the conference. So I think that was the biggest adjustment, having to face pitchers whose speed I'd never seen before, the movement that I'd never seen, was just it was hard. It was really hard.
And it was always Belmont and Lake Mills, it seemed like. Weren't they kind of the top two teams most years?
Yeah, Belmont,
Doherty
had the
girls.
great, yes, the three Doherty girls, and then Howard Dorman, legendary coach that was there for forever.
Yeah.
Those 10 or 11 years that the Doherty girls went through, they were tough to beat. Yeah, they were one year after another just dominant.
Yeah.
But we did beat Belmont. It was my freshman year on the old field, or my eighth grade year, I guess, on the old field. They at the time were ranked. They were, I believe, fighting with Forest City for the conference title. And we took them to 9 or 10 innings. I can't remember for sure. But beat them on their second baseman and right fielder and first baseman let a pop, just kind of a blooper fall in between the three of them. And we ended up scoring and winning. And I remember Coach Boozman falling to his knees in just excitement. I'm sure we hadn't beat Belmont since, before the Dohertys were there. And I think it was the first time he had beat Belmont in his career. So that was one of my most memorable games. Yeah, it was a really fun experience. But yeah, aside from Belmont, Lake Mills was always good. At the time, Jim Diemer was the coach for softball as well as volleyball.
Yeah.
And he just had a system, and they, from a young age, just built, bought into his system. So they were dominant. And then Forest City had Marisa Jensen,
Oh yeah, I
who
remember that name.
was outstanding. Luckily for me, I got to go on and play softball at Waldorf with Chelsea Doherty and then Marisa Jensen. And it was much nicer to be on their team than have to go against them. That's for sure.
No kidding. Yeah, I forgot all about the Jensen girl. I remember reading
Yes.
about her in the paper and watching her quite a bit. So
Yeah.
was it kind of weird in a sense, or did you feel any like upperclassmen maybe being jealous or upset that you took a spot from them, or was it pretty team oriented as when you were an eighth grader there?
There was definitely some upset people, especially the first, few weeks. Yeah, I wouldn't say people were overly excited about the fact that I took their spots or that I was playing with them. Luckily, Danielle Kalsdorf, Stendrud now, and Morgan Shields really kind of took me under their wing, brought me in. Danielle, obviously with a good family friend, I had known her my whole life, so she was fantastic. She played third base, so we were kind of left side, strong side, we always said. So that was great, but it took some time. It wasn't easy, that's for sure. And I wouldn't say people really liked me for the first little while. I think the social aspect of things was probably even more difficult than, playing as an eighth grader. I was young, and at that time, social media wasn't around. So I would say, I don't know, we were more naive coming out of junior high than maybe kids are these days. And I was thrown into a group of almost all juniors, and then Mary Mallon, who was a sophomore or was a freshman at the time,
Yep.
just a year older than me. So really grateful for Danielle and Morgan. And in the end, you know, Tasha and Holly and Kelly, they all became good friends, and I loved playing with them. But it was hard at first, for sure.
Yep, definitely. It always comes into my mind, but I'm a high school
Yes.
golf coach, and I tell my kids, I don't care if you've been on my team for 3 years, and as a senior you get beat out by a freshman. I got to play the best players.
Yep. Yeah.
You play to win, you know.
Looking back, like I'm really glad that Coach Boozman, and then when we get to basketball, Coach Drake, were willing to play me at that age. Because like you said, not all coaches are, but they gave me the opportunity, and it worked out in my favor. It was great, and yeah, those people all became great teammates, great friends. But it was a struggle at first.
Yep, I don't doubt that. And I like the Remember the Titans line you used there.
Yeah, right. Yes.
That was about that time. I think that came
Yeah,
out
it was. Yeah, it was.
2001.
That's definitely where we took it from. So
Yep, perfect. Yep. So that 8th grade year, you guys were 13 and 15, got 6th in the conference, lost in the second round of regionals to NSRF. Norris Springs Rock Falls, who's now with Central Springs, and they're combined with North Central. And you mentioned Mary already. She was only a freshman, and she was the main pitcher at that point. She pitched a lot of innings in her career.
she did. Yeah, I'd be curious to know how many innings. She did. We'll talk about this, I'm sure, but she did have an injury one year. But we rode Mary. She was our ride or die. We really didn't have many other options.
Yep.
If I remember correctly, Amber Halig pitched a little bit those first year or two, but minimal. It was mainly Mary.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
She was young. She was really young too, and yeah, we just made it work.
Yep, definitely. So that was your 8th grade year. Freshman year, you guys had a winning record, 15 and 14. You got 4th in the conference at 6 and 8. What I found on you is you batted .322 with 29 hits, 17 RBIs, and then you were second team all conference that year. You already mentioned like Danielle, Holly, Ashley Schmidt, Mary, Tasha, and Morgan were also all conference. And this was also Coach Boozman's last year coaching softball at West Hancock. And then you guys played on the new field that year, correct?
Yes, because I think I just played on the old field my first season, which I loved the old field. I loved the sunken dugouts. It was a cool little atmosphere with the like the sand lot behind it. I really liked the old field, but the new field was nice too.
Yeah, I got someone behind me right now. Yeah, buddy, go. No, go. Anyway, sorry about that. I just remember on that old field, I've told this in another podcast before, but I watched possibly the worst softball game of all time on that field when my sister Wendy played. You would have just missed her, I think, by a year.
Yeah, I think she had just graduated right before me.
They beat Corwith, I think it was 30-25.
Ooh.
And it wasn't because they were such good hitters. It was because no one knew how to get an out. It was brutal. I think every time someone got an out, the crowd just kind of gave one of those mock cheers almost, or it was like, thank you.
Well, and I'm guessing if you're scoring that many runs, pitching probably wasn't great either. So
No,
that makes some miserable games for sure.
Watching the scoreboard operator, I think worked harder than anybody that game. So yeah. And then sophomore year, kind of a down year. You guys went from 15 and 14, had a lot of seniors on that team, went 4 and 23, lost to Garner in the playoffs, which is never fun. Mary broke her wrist, so she was out a lot of that season. So like you said, you ride one pitcher, that pitcher gets hurt. That's tough. You were first team all conference that year, your third time on the all conference list. And then Mary still made all conference, even though she was out most of the year. Kathy Schmidt, she had to have been just a freshman, wasn't she, at that time?
She was my age, so she would have been a sophomore.
Okay.
Too. Yep.
I thought she was younger than that. And then Ellen Ing.
Gotta love Ellen.
We could probably stop the podcast right now and just talk about Ellen the rest of the time.
For sure. Ellen, Mary, and I, we spent a lot of time cruising around in soy seed, the good old soy seed van. We would cruise around and try and hit every bump as fast as we could in town. And there was one time we were cruising and flew through an intersection, hit the bump, and the guy across the street was standing in his yard, and he starts laughing and points at us. And luckily he did, because as we went over the bump, the spare tire on the back of the van fell off and was laying in the middle of the road. So had he not done that, we would have just driven off and not even known. But yeah, Ellen, she's a good time. She's one of those people, one of those teammates that always knew how to put a smile on your face.
Oh yeah.
Made everybody laugh. Just one of fantastic person.
I went to youth group with Ellen, and John and Holly Lang were our youth group sponsors, or whatever you called them back then, in a small church. I went to Southern Mississippi with Ellen and a bunch of other people in a van.
Oh
The Allen
boy.
siblings, the Langs, a couple others from our church, and I think Ellen broke a ping pong table at the place we were staying at while she was singing old Easter hymns as loud as she could.
Oh my goodness.
And then one year we went to Decorah on like a camping trip, and we went canoeing. And Ellen and I think she was with Emily Lang in a canoe. They got stuck on the side in these rocks. Ellen literally just like took her out of the canoe, picked up the canoe with like just an arm, and moved it to where she wanted it. Got Emily back in the canoe and got back in, and they kept going like nothing happened. We were just like, that is
Ellen.
that's
That
Ellen
is
in a
Ellen.
nutshell. So
Yes. Ellen, she also taught me is a very loose term, but taught me how to play saxophone
oh boy.
for jazz band. I was a percussionist and I hated playing the trap set. So Mrs. Padol let her try and teach me how to play saxophone, and I would play occasionally in the jazz band. So she was fun time for sure.
Too bad there's no video proof of that. That'd been
I was awful, but I tried.
Yeah. Every year on her birthday, I text or message her, Eleanor, gee, I think you're Swellenor. It's an old Saturday Night Live thing, and she's every year says she looks forward to that. So
that's awesome.
Need to get together with Ellen sometime.
Yes, with Ellen, I was, so glad that she like stuck out every sport. She's, basketball, softball. By the time she was a junior and senior, she was playing, but prior to that, she unfortunately spent a lot of time on the bench, but she was still one of those teammates that everybody loved. She made practice more fun. She made the atmosphere, just great. So it's happy to see that, like you said, she was an all conference member that year, which I think would have been her senior year.
Yeah, she was a year older than me. Yep.
And like you said, that year we had lost, I think, 7 of our starters off the year before. So it was tough. But Ellen made it fun. She made things much more enjoyable. I'm a competitive person, so I didn't like losing, and that was a frustrating season. But thank goodness for Ellen and Mary, they made things much more enjoyable. And like you said, Mary was out a lot of the season, so the fact that we lost 7 and then our pitcher goes down with an arm injury
you were pretty much the only starter back.
Yes.
And speaking of Mallons, Coach Sean Mallon took over that year, right? It went from Lisbon to Mallon. So
yes, he did, which I love Sean, but there was an interesting dynamic between him and Mary sometimes.
I remember that.
It was interesting is probably the best way to describe it. I do remember, I remember the incident when Mary got slid into and broke her arm. She was covering third base and got slid into, and after that, Sean changed all of our coverages for bases so that the pitcher never had to cover home plate on a pass ball, never had to cover third or anything. So we made a lot of adjustments just to try and keep Mary safe.
Especially if she's the only pitcher. I mean, that makes sense.
Yes. She did end up coming back, if I remember correctly. I don't remember at what point in the season, but she played with this big cast on her arm, and I know they had to get it approved by the state association, and it was a whole ordeal, but
good old Sean. I love Sean. We went to church with Sean, and then his wife Betty helped with youth group as well. Kind of tag team with the Langs, and spent quite a bit of time over at the Mallon house.
So did I. Really good people.
Oh yeah, they're good. Again, people I need to touch base with again. It's just
right?
Gets away from you. So, yep. So let's move through your last couple seasons here. Your junior year, you guys were 9-17, fifth in the conference. You were first team all conference. Mary again was on that list, and Bree Lushin. You hit 255 with a 910 fielding percentage from shortstop. You beat North Iowa 6-0 in the postseason, and then lost 12-4 to North Kossuth to end that season. And then your senior year, 7-23. You were second team all state. You were all district, and then obviously first team all conference again to make it 5 in a row. So you had an honorable mention, second team, and then 3 first team all conference selections, which is pretty neat. Wrapping softball up here, what can you say about your softball career?
Oh, I think what was most unique for me is how many different people I got to play with.
Mm.
Starting as an 8th grader, I got to play with girls that were juniors and seniors at that time, all the way through people that were quite a bit younger than me, which made for some really good memories. I love that softball in Iowa is in the summer. It's just a totally different experience than any other sport, just because you don't really have anything else to worry about. I mean, summer jobs, but you can really kind of focus in on softball and have a lot of fun while you're doing it. So I don't know, some of my favorite memories are softball. I was lucky enough to have Coach Boozman for a couple of years, followed by Coach Mallon, both outstanding coaches. I know we've talked a little about Coach Boozman, but he's just one of those guys, just a salt of the earth kind of guy. I had him both in softball and then in track as well. But he was so well respected by everybody, knew how to make practice fun. But he also taught me a lot. I grew so much as a person and as a softball player from him. And like I said earlier, I'm just so grateful that he gave me the opportunity as an 8th grader, that he threw me in. I probably didn't think I was ready at that time, but he did, and it worked out, and I appreciate that, because it was a great experience. Thinking about other coaches, assistant wise, Anna Hellinga Gritters, who's one of the sponsors. She was our assistant a couple years, and we had some really good times with her. She probably hated all of us, but she was so much fun. And then Morgan Shields, who I played with, ended up coming back and was an
Oh
assistant
yeah,
coach
I do
for a
remember that.
year or two as well. So I had some great coaches. Yeah, softball. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yep. And speaking of Anna, she's one of our sponsors tonight. Between your assistant softball coach and your 5th grade basketball coach, she wanted to sponsor tonight's episode. So thanks to Anna, a 2000 West Hancock grad, for sponsoring episode 50. And then I also have Miller and Sons Golf Cars in Britt. Their family-owned operation has over 50 years of business experience. Skip and Jim Miller worked together with their dad Monty until his passing in 1996. Associated with EasyGo, Miller and Sons now calls on over 1,000 golf cars in 3 different states. Companies and courses are always extremely happy with their products, service, and honesty. This has resulted in double-digit growth each passing year. Based in Britt, Miller and Sons employs 18 full-time employees and 3 part-timers. The next generation is being trained as we speak to ensure long-term stability of the company. For more information, call them at 843-4132. Email them at customer service at millergolfcars.com or visit them online at millergolfcars.com. The Showalter family in Window World of Mason City is a new sponsor of mine. They gave a ton of money to sponsor all the episodes I ever do. So I'm really happy to work with Window World of Mason City. This is his wife, Joe Showalter was a West Hancock grad. He passed away, and his wife now is a big part of that company. So she wanted to say, once an Eagle, always an Eagle, fly high, Coach Sanger and Joey Showalter. And then First State Bank takes pride in their community-based values and wants to be your bank. They take pride in serving the Eagle Nation communities. They can personalize your banking products to meet the needs of your busy life with free internet banking and their mobile banking app with mobile deposit. Try their bill pay services as well. First State Bank backs their Eagles 24/7, just like their service to you. First State Bank, whether it's personal, business, real estate, or agriculture loans, they have the products to serve you best. That's First State Bank in Britt. All right. Like we'd said off air, we're gonna breeze through volleyball quick. Of the 4 sports, it wasn't your main one, but we do have an amazing story to talk about. That's one of my favorite high school memories. Um, in 2002, so the fall of 2002, you guys were struggling as a volleyball team. That was your freshman season. I think it was just like a week or two left in the season. I think almost every senior quit. They weren't, meshing well with the coach at the time, or things weren't going well. I don't remember the whole story there, but a lot of those underclassmen had to step in and play. And with a 5-22-2 record going into the postseason, it got pretty crazy. Um, what do you remember about that before I get into some more details?
Well, I can't remember exactly when, but it was around my birthday that all those girls quit. And yeah, that was made for an interesting season because I don't know, it was 6 or 7. It was a whole bunch of them. I think Tasha Johnson was the only one that stuck it out, if I remember correctly.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
But yeah, after that happened, I mean, I don't think anybody expected us to win another match after that, because they had all been starting. Most of us that ended up playing the rest of the season had been playing JV primarily. But yeah, like you said, we made quite a run at the end. That got pretty crazy.
Yeah, in the first round of postseason, we beat WCLT, which is kind of fun to talk about because they're no longer a school. You kind of forget about that. And then I was reading in the Britt News Tribune around this time, Mrs. Sanger got involved, and she wanted to make sure that we gave the volleyball team as much support as sometimes the football team got. And she wanted us to kind of get into the next game. And I think we listened to her tenfold, because against Ventura in the district semifinals, we literally had kids on the top row of the bleachers banging on the walls as hard as they could. I mean, just screaming. We were jumping up and down. I don't know how we didn't break those bleachers. It was so loud in that gym. We won to go to the district finals. We stormed the court. It's funny because like what 7-22 team, wins a district semifinal game and you storm the court, but we did, and it was so much fun. And then in the district finals, so our third postseason game, Newman came to Britt. I don't know why we hosted. We must have had a bigger gym.
Yeah, I don't know why. Well, I'm guessing that's the only reason why. I mean, they only had bleachers on one side of the gym,
Yeah,
so that must have been why, I
because
guess.
I think they were ranked in like the top 15 rankings and heavily favored, obviously, against us. And we swept them 3-0, 15-13, 15-12, 15-12. And again, I think we had more kids there banging on the walls, screaming, jumping up and down. The cheering, like the bump set spike cheers and stuff were interesting at times, harassing the other team a little bit. And it was, and I think we stormed the court again and
Yeah, we
just,
definitely did. I I don't think I've ever heard the gym that loud as those two games in any of the other sports or any of the other events I've been to. That was, I think, the loudest I've ever heard our high school gymnasium. And
yeah.
like you said, it was all because of Mrs. Sanger. Prior to those games, we had close to 0 students in our student section that would come because we weren't any good at the time. But she got them there, and you guys were, yeah, outstanding.
It was something else. I
Yeah,
still think about that once in a while. I'm like, man, that was a lot of fun. And so in my mind, all these years later, I thought we were one win away from state. But what in my research, I found out back then in Class 1A, you had to win 3 district games to qualify for regionals, and then it was 3 regional games you had to win just to get to state.
really.
The smaller classes was more like that because there was a lot more teams. The 3A, 4A was, win 3 and you're at state. So the whole time we were playing Garrigan, or I was thinking about that, I thought it was to go to state. We actually had to win 3 more, but we still made it farther than like any team in the last like 20 some years.
Yeah, probably as far the furthest that we made it since probably Candace Wilson was there.
But I think I did a podcast with her. I'm pretty sure we lost in the second round of her senior year.
Really?
They got, I think, upset. I think they had to play Lake Mills early her junior year. I'd have to go back and listen to it again or go through the
Okay.
notes, but I don't think they made it past like round 2 or round 3.
Dave would remember.
Dave
Dave
would,
he
yeah,
he remembers all of that. So
yeah. So she ended up doing all right in college though.
yeah, she did.
Yeah, so we lost to Garrigan 3-1 in that. It was a regional quarterfinal. Um, And I think by about halfway through that game, we kind of knew the outcome wasn't going to be real good. It wasn't close, but it was the farthest we had gotten in years. It was a blast. So that was your freshman year, and I said probably selfishly I put this in the notes because it was some of the most fun I've had in high school. But then your sophomore year, 03, you guys were 18 and 17. You played with like Denise Rasmussen, Angie Pritchard, Brittany Johnson. Those three were all conference, and Ellen and a couple others. You guys lost to Lake Mills that year in the districts. They were always good, still are really good. But you played and started quite a bit in that game. You had 9 kills, were 12 for 12 serving. That's what I found about your sophomore year. And then your junior year, you guys were 12 and 22. You won a district game against Northwood, and then you lost to Ventura 3-1. I couldn't find if you were all conference that year or anything. Do you remember much about those 2 seasons?
My junior year, I believe I was second team all conference in volleyball,
Okay.
from what I remember. And then I think first team my senior year, but I'm pretty sure a second team as a junior. Volleyball, it wasn't my sport, like you said. I played it because I love to compete and I love to just play. But volleyball was never really my thing. Which getting thrown in as a freshman in volleyball was probably more shocking than the softball as an 8th grader. Just because at the time I hadn't gone to any volleyball camps. I'd played 2 seasons of junior high volleyball. Back then, like youth volleyball wasn't really a thing at that time. So 2-month seasons of junior high volleyball is the only experience I had. So getting thrown in was shocking for sure. But my freshman year, I primarily just played back row, and then my sophomore, junior, senior year, I started playing more all the way around, playing front row a little bit. Volleyball wasn't quite as much of a big deal to me. A few things I do remember: my senior year, Mrs. DeHart was adamantly opposed to us playing powder puff football homecoming week, but we all did anyways. She was so worried that we were going to get hurt. So go ahead, we play, JMO Money Honeys. We ended up winning.
Oh, geez.
Just throw that in there. Jake Moore, way to go.
Was that your senior year, you said?
Yes, this was my senior year. Yep.
Because your junior year, I was a senior, and the 4 football captains would be myself, Nick Hartman, Chad Eisman, Justin Johnson. We had the 4 teams. We were the captains for the powder puff teams.
Yep.
And I think Nick Hartman paid us off to get the number 1 pick so he could pick you. Pretty certain that's how it worked out.
I was on his team, so that could have been.
Yep. And then Mike Johnson, yes, a classmate of yours, he was my assistant. And we got Coach Sanger and Coach Boozman to get us the headsets that they use on Friday nights. And Mike was up in the booth watching from up there. And he just told me jokes the whole night. I don't think.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine being on a headset. Oh.
Like, Mike, what'd you see up there? And he goes, I don't know, Dan, but here's a good joke for you. And you just tell me something dumb. So, yeah,
that's funny.
That's good times.
Yes. So she was, didn't want us to play. So worried. We played. It was great. I loved powder puff football. One of my favorite memories each year. But very next day, then in practice, I went up for a spike, came down, landed on the blocker on the opposite side of the net's ankle or foot, ended up with a high ankle sprain. Beth Rasmussen was an assistant at the time. She ended up taking me to the emergency room. So ended up on crutches, and obviously it was homecoming week, less than ideal as a senior being on crutches. So we went TPing on crutches. Thank goodness for Rachel Johnson. She carried me around on piggyback most of the night from house to house. And then the worst of it was I was on homecoming court. We had the pep rally, and I had to, in a dress, crutch down across the gym floor in front of everybody. Jake Moore was my escort, and we hadn't quite thought about the fact that once we got to the other end, we had to get up onto the stage. So we get down to the steps, and we looked at each other, and he had a rose that he was supposed to give me when we met, and he just shoved it in my mouth, picked me up, and carried me up the stairs. So that was a pretty funny memory, and very much a Jake Moore thing to do. So, but yeah, so I missed then, I think, the rest of the volleyball season that year, which it was towards the end. But yeah, missed a week or two. So
Cool. Yeah, I need to get Jake on here, do an episode.
oh my goodness.
I
Yeah.
think the statute of limitations is passed on most things, so we wouldn't incriminate each other from being next door neighbors and all the dumb stuff we did. So should be good there.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, let's move to track and field / golf, because I literally did not remember that you went out for golf your senior year and not track. Sorry, Coach Boozman, if he will be watching this. I know he will be, but not to bring up any bad memories. But yeah, you qualified for state your freshman year in track, 2003, with Morgan Shields, Amber Halick, and Holly DeGoose in the 4x2. You guys finished 4th from lane 8, which is pretty impressive. That's the hardest lane to do well in. And you guys set a school record with a time of 1:47.12. Then you also ran in the 4x4 with Steph Airy, who I'm doing a podcast with later this year, Angie Pritchard, and then Holly. Also got 4th in that one. And then says you qualified for state in the D-Med, but I couldn't find that. Do you remember about that race? Or am I off?
Nope, you're right. We got 5th.
Okay.
The D-Med was different though, because there wasn't prelims at that time for the D-Med. Okay. Everything was just a final. So but yeah, we ended up taking 5th. It was a crazy track season. I mean, we just had an amazing season all the way around.
Yeah.
Track, I'm gonna be honest, I hated to run, but we were so good. So it was fun. We were competitive night in and night out. We won a lot of meets. Prior to my freshman year, I hadn't run anything more than a 200. So I ended up running a lot of 400s. Boozman kind of forced me into that. I had run a lot of hurdles in junior high as well. But when I got to high school, we were loaded with hurdlers that were very good. So kind of transitioned out of it, which was great. And I was fine with, like you said, we were very successful down at the state meet. 4x2 set a school record. Our 4x4, we had set a school record earlier in the year. We actually qualified for the Drake relays in the 4x4. We were the 24th of 24 teams to qualify. So we had the last time to get in. We just squeaked in. We were in the slowest heat of prelims, and we were stuck in lane 8 again. But we went out in lane 8 and we set the school record. Qualified for the finals against a bunch of the big 3A, 4A, 5A schools. Yeah. And then went on and we ended up finishing 6th in the finals. So, like I said, track wasn't my favorite, but running at the Drake relays is probably one of my favorite and most memorable moments of my athletic career.
Yeah, and track's just one of those sports. Even if you don't love it, if you're competitive enough, it's pretty fun because you're out there and it's there. The time doesn't lie and the distances don't lie, and it is how it is. So, and Steph Airy, I talked about her on like Boozman's podcast and a few others. I don't think I've ever seen an athlete so focused on succeeding like Steph. She was just in a zone. Like even at school, like you could tell she was just all she cared about.
Yeah, laser focused in, and she was such a competitor. She had a couple, I believe it was at the Drake relays where she took a tumble over the hurdles, was racing to try and, take 1st or 2nd. But she came back, had just an incredible career. She was so much fun to run with. Great teammates, just fantastic person. I remember though my freshman year, we were going into the 4x4, which is obviously the last race of the state meet. And at the time, our 4x4 had been one of our strongest events all year. We, were set to probably finish top 3. And as a team, we were in the running still at that point for the state championship. All we had to do was take care of business. So 4x4 starts. We led, I would say, all but the last 100 to 150 meters of the race. So most of that race we're feeling great, thinking that we're going to bring home a state title. And unfortunately, that last 100 meters or so, our final runner just kind of cramped up a little bit. You could just see it got tight, and we ended up taking fourth. And then we also took fourth as a team. But so as great of those memories were, it was also extremely disappointing because we had definitely set our sights on a state championship. We knew it was possible. And so to kind of see it just slip away in that last 100 meters, it hurt, it stung.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
that's why, like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
We're like the Hall of Fame we were talking about earlier, where, these state championship type teams, it's like that's a big deal because winning a state championship isn't easy, and there's always one little thing that could go wrong that could, ruin that chance at a championship. And that's, to say that you won a state championship in anything is a pretty big deal, just because 100 meters to go and a little tiny cramp in a leg cost you a state title.
Yeah, exactly.
Be able to finish off the job and get it done. So,
Yep.
yeah. Do you know those state records you set? Do you know how long they lasted for, or are they still records at the school?
I think the 4x2 one was beat when Maria Gonzalez was in
Yep.
school.
It's like 2015 or 16,
Yeah, yep.
like that.
And then as far as I know, the 4x4 record still stands.
Nice.
I should probably check that out, I guess, but I'm pretty sure it still stands. So
Yeah, that's neat. Do you check in from time to time and look at times at all on the paper and go, "Ooh, still got it," or-
occasionally I will. Yeah, just I don't know. It's fun to check in just in general. But yeah, definitely.
kind of like Jeff Nielsen. He had the state record for a couple years in a couple events, and every year it was so fun to look up at that board and see that his name was
still there.
up there. That was
Yep.
at the state level. So,
Yep.
yep. So yeah, you guys got fourth as a team that year. It was your third straight district title as a program. And then 2004, you guys were ninth as a team. You made it back to state in the DMed in the 4x2. You ran with Amber Halix, Sarah Everett, Holly DeGoose. In the 4x2, you got fifth, time of 149.10. In the DMed, you, Holly Everett, and Allison Segrist were sixth, the time of 417.33. Another laser-like focus type athlete were the Segrists. They were homeschooled, but man, they between Allison and a couple of the boys that ran like cross country and track for Britt, West Hancock, Garner, the cross country thing. They were pretty dedicated runners as well.
Yes, they were. They were actually my neighbors growing up. So we lived out on Highway 18 and they were just up the hill from us. So I knew them quite well growing up. So I had probably a better relationship than a lot of people with them just because I knew them. Mm-hmm. But like you said, Allison was super focused. Her sister Ashley also ran with us.
Yeah.
Didn't necessarily have as much success as Allison had. But she was not near as focused. She was there, was a fun loving, just good person to have around. But yeah, Allison was focused as can be. My freshman year, I can't remember if it was the 800 or 1500, which one it was, but she was expected to do quite well in that event, and she didn't want to run it when we got to the state meet. Tried to convince Coach Boozman to take her out of it, pull her out of it. She wanted to run in the 4x4 instead, and she ended up running it. Didn't run as well as she normally did, but yeah, she was a special athlete. She was quite the runner. So yeah, didn't have quite as good of a year my sophomore year, but we still won a lot of meets. Still had a great experience at state. The one thing I remember about my sophomore year is one of the first meets of the year, Coach Boozman made me run an 800. And it was awful. And I told him at the end, I'm never running an 800 again, or I'm done with track. Yeah, that was awful. 400s were my max.
Don't blame me there.
Yes.
Yeah. And then 2005 would have been my senior year, your junior year. I couldn't find anything about the state meet. Do you remember junior year? Because my research is coming up short.
Well, I don't remember a ton about the team, but I had a knee injury during basketball that year.
Okay.
So I had knee surgery and missed all of the track season. So I was a manager that year. Spent all the time with the team, just couldn't compete. I was rehabbing, trying to do whatever I could to get back for softball. So I didn't run. I mean, I still remember them having quite a bit of success. But yeah, I didn't run that year.
Yeah, I just off the top of my head could not remember what the circumstances were there.
Yeah.
But then senior year, you decided to give something else a shot. So you went from state track qualifier twice to a manager to a golfer. Your senior year, why'd you make the change?
Well, Coach Boozman wasn't very happy with me, I will tell you that. But you know,
Please don't do it. It's fine.
yeah, I had spent a lot of seasons just putting a lot of time in, competing at the highest level that I could. And so I was just ready for a break. I knew I was going on and playing both basketball and softball in college, and just felt like I needed a little change of pace and some time to kind of relax and refocus. So I decided to give golf a try. I grew up golfing. My family, we spent a lot of time on the golf course, but prior to that year, I don't think I had stepped foot on the golf course since fifth or sixth grade.
Yeah.
So it was it was more for just for fun. It also gave me a little more flexibility. I wanted to get basketball workouts in as much as I could to prep for the next year.
Yeah.
So it was more of just I needed to change a pace. Val Burgard, I know, was a driving force in this too. She convinced me to join the golf team. But it was a lot of fun. It was also super frustrating, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, you didn't do too bad. One meet I saw in my research, you shot a 52 and you guys won over Belmont. You were medalist that meet. And then at districts at West Bend, you led the team with a 104 and the team got third as a team. So we're competitive at least. I just remember those windbreakers you guys would wear. It was like those red
Yes.
ones with the V, the red and white V down the front. Um,
And
very
they just got huge. The wind would just
2000s.
make
Yep.
them, we're like marshmallows.
Yep. Yep. Still remember those. That was totally the like early 2000s, mid, that
Hmm.
decade. So,
Yeah, it was.
and
It
it
was.
seems to me like Coach Boozman's forgiven you, so we're good there.
Yeah, I hope so. I
Yeah.
hope so.
Yeah. Well, he got involved with this podcast tonight, so that's good. He through the Dave Fink Memorial Fund is sponsoring the podcast, so we can
Yeah.
um, say that he's probably good now.
Yes,
Speaking
yes.
of, I gotta find my thing here. Oh, my computer might not want to work for me. Well, I might not be able to do that. That's okay. The Dave Fink Memorial Fund is our next sponsor. Dave Fink taught and coached at West Hancock for several years before moving on to Waverly Shellrock. He died in 2016 at the age of 41, leaving behind his wife and 3 sons. The Dave Fink Memorial Fund raises money to give out scholarships to Waverly Shellrock graduating seniors, helps fund the WSR Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and they continue to support the Waverly Shellrock football program. So please consider giving to the Dave Fink Memorial Fund. Let me know if you need help with that. Next weekend, not this coming weekend, is the Dave Fink Memorial Golf Tournament. And one of these years, I'm going to get there and play in it. If you want to play, contact me. I'll get you that information as well. And then Amanda Crumweed, you already mentioned, and White Barn Picket Fence is one of my sponsors tonight. She sponsored episodes quite a while ago and decided to do some more. She specializes in newborn and children's photography and has been doing that for about 15 years now up in northern Iowa. An expansion into farmhouse decor and gifts began about 5 years ago. Their first location was in downtown Algona, and now they have a second location in downtown Clear Lake. With 2 locations to best serve their customers, White Barn Picket Fence brings the best of modern I can't talk tonight. Farmhouse style and unique gifts to the North Iowa area. You can shop online at whitebarnpicketfence.com. Thanks also to Sidetrack Lanes and Britt for sponsoring the podcast. Sidetrack Lanes opened in Britt in 1996 under new ownership with Ron Bauer. Go bowl at 411 Main Avenue North in Britt. Enjoy some food and a drink or two while you're bowling. Join a league, check out their events on their Facebook page. Call them at 843-4567. And that's again Ron Bauer and Sidetrack Lanes in Britt. Levi Don Trucking is my next sponsor. Thanks to Levi Don and his trucking company for sponsoring a whole bunch of these episodes. You can call Levi at 641-860-0077 or look him up on Facebook. That's Levi Don Trucking in Britt. And then a new sponsor is In His Image Photography. Weddings, families, seniors, birthdays, maternity, and more. Let us capture all your important moments, big or small. That's In His Image Photography by Ashley, located in Britt, Iowa. And then I got to share my screen here quick. Can you see that? Had an anonymous donor give in memory of Coach Robin Drake. Coach Drake was a boys and girls, and at one time the boys and girls basketball coach at West Hancock for over a decade. He coached myself and he coached Sarah, and you can see her in the picture there. Coach Drake passed away in 2014 from cancer. And like I said, an anonymous donor gave to the Sanger Legacy Fund in his honor tonight. So thank you to that individual for giving to the Sanger Legacy Fund. And that's a good segue into basketball, because this was your sport, right?
Yeah. This and softball, I would say, whichever sport, whichever season we were in. But yeah, basketball is by far my favorite to play. So.
Yep, and I think this is the one you're probably the most well known for. Because most people, hate to say it, but more people went to basketball games than they did baseball and softball games.
Yes, for sure.
Something to do in the winter. Always a lot going on in the summer. But your freshman season, you averaged 9.4 points a game, 3.5 assists. You were named first team all conference, and Coach Drake was your coach at that time. That's when he did boys and girls, which I just can't imagine doing boys and girls in the same time. We'd be in the locker room waiting for our game to start, and he'd come in from the girls' game and be like, all right, let's go. And he'd go right back out there and get that game going. I couldn't imagine how exhausted he would be at the end of a night.
Yeah, I don't know how he just flipped the switch from one game to the next, or one practice to the next. You guys probably got him after, our games where there was plenty of frustrating games we had. So I apologize, because I'm sure he wasn't always the happiest after our games. But yeah, the fact that he did that, I think for 2 years, my freshman and sophomore year, he did both.
Was it 2? I thought it was 3, but I could be wrong.
Oh, it could have been 3. It could have been 3.
Yeah, it was 3, because I made a note that your senior year it was Kevin Wilson. Okay. Every other year I had Drake in there. Yeah, so I think it was 3 years. So that was be a long 3 winners.
Yes,
doing what he did.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know how he did it, but I give a lot of credit to Coach Drake for the person I am, for the basketball player I was. He had a big impact on me, even as a 4th, 5th, 6th grader. He was our PE teacher, and he got me involved as a manager for the high school team at that point, which is, it was a pretty cool experience for me. Not only was I just the manager, but I got thrown into practice sometimes and would have to try and break their press. And at that time, I would just dribble all the way through them, weave through them. And coaches at the time weren't very happy with that. But, between him and then, Anna and Ivy May, the GBA program, which, would be great if it was still around, but obviously AAU and travel ball has totally changed how youth basketball is. But Anna and Ivy and Coach Drake played a big role in forming the player I was, the person I was. Anna and Ivy, they had to have just hated our group. We had some squirrely people. I wasn't necessarily one of those people, but my class had some squirrely people, and Ivy was also that way. So we didn't get a whole lot accomplished at practice.
Had a lot of fun.
Yes, but we had a lot of fun. And I remember our very first tournament we were supposed to have was in Lake Mills, and we're getting ready to start, and Anna and Ivy are nowhere to be found. They haven't shown up yet, and they ended up being late. So a parent stepped in, but they somehow ended up on gravel roads on the way to Lake Mills, and the back window of Ivy's car fell out while they were on gravel roads. So that was quite an experience. And then another memory with them. I said I was a manager. So after one of the tournaments, they had a varsity game that night. So I rode back with them after our tournament, and we're pulling into Britt, about a mile from the Mays house there on Highway 18, and the cop lights turn on, and or pulling Ivy over, and she just starts freaking out, doesn't want to get pulled over in front of her house. So she turns off at the turn right before Britt,
Yep.
pulls in kind of by, what's the business there? Unicover, by
Yep.
Unicover. And she makes up this whole story about how, the miles per hour just stopped working and she didn't know how fast she was going, and went on and on. They couldn't get, the glove box open to get the papers out. So yeah, it was a mess. But in the end, they let us go. We made it to the game just barely on time for warm-ups.
Jeez.
But we had a lot of fun with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, you know, kids miss out on these days. They don't have that same experience with high school kids like we did.
Yeah.
Obviously there's pros and cons to the AAU and the travel ball, but those were some of my favorite memories with basketball with Anna and Ivy. So
And it's funny that you talk about being a manager, because I completely forgot. I didn't forget that I was a manager for the boys team, but I forgot that we were both managers
yeah.
kind of at the same time. So we'd be on the bus, and what would happen was I was the pudgy little guy, and Ivy May and Jamie Veldhouse and some of those girls would have me sit with them, and they would tell me things. And if I went home and told my parents what they were teaching me on that bus, my parents would not have let me be a manager anymore, because they were.
Oh yeah, for sure. Mine would have been the same way because yep.
Yeah. And then Adam Bird was one of my favorite players because he was a good rebounder and a hustler. Oh, him and Mr. Drake would get into it at practice. And as young kids, we saw and heard a lot more than we ever should have.
Yes, for
Yeah, I
sure.
totally agree with you, man. It's like some of the experiences we had seemed like they don't seem like a big deal, if you just talk to a random person about it. But just some of the things we saw, heard, experienced, got to be a part of. And as a little kid, it's a big deal to be behind the
Yeah,
bench.
it was a really big deal. I loved it. And I loved basketball before then, but that experience is probably why basketball was my favorite. It's why I spent so much time with it. And yeah, Coach Drake is a big part of that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, our coaches between Sangers and Drake, and they were smart by having little kids be managers.
yeah.
It could have been like a burden to them, been more challenging and more work to have these little kids running around, but that was the future of their programs.
Yeah, and they knew that.
Yep.
They made sure we felt included. Yeah.
And the players make sure we were way too included at times.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Sorry, we kind of got off topic from my
that's
freshman
fine.
season, but
That's fine with
um,
me, by all means. Yep.
yeah.
So yeah, that freshman year you guys lost in the first round to Garrigan 42-38. And then your sophomore season, 15 points per game. You led the team in scoring, assists, and steals. You were second in rebounds. But then you had an ankle injury. That would have been from the end of volleyball, correct? Did you?
I think this was just a maybe a 1 or 2 game one.
Okay.
Minor, if I remember correctly, it was right towards the end of the season. I think I actually missed the first district game. I think we played Lake Mills, and I think I sat out of that one and then came back for the next game, which I believe we played Emmitsburg. Unless there might have been one in between there, but we played Emmitsburg, and I remember that game very well because I was at the time the sophomore with a group of a bunch of seniors. It was Denise Rasmussen, Angie Pritchard, Casey Finch, Amber Halick, Brittany Johnson. So a group of seniors, and we were very close at the end. I think we were down 3, less than 10 seconds to go. We had a play drawn up, and it wasn't supposed to go to me. But things don't always go as planned.
Yep.
So I took a shot from the 3-point line. And it didn't hit anything. I airballed. And I remember that very well because I felt like I ended the careers of all those girls.
Yeah.
So I spent the bus ride crying. That was a rough time for me, but we had a really good year. That group was really fun to play with. We talked about in softball how the adjustment was playing as a 8th grader. I would say I had played with some of these girls in softball and volleyball already, but as a freshman, basketball was probably the one where I faced the most opposition, I guess. There was a couple individuals where I took quite a bit of their playing time, started over them, and they weren't happy and their families weren't happy. So that one, it was a struggle my freshman year. I think Coach Drake would say that. And I remember at our banquet that he kind of almost apologized for putting me up for first team all conference. And he said he went back and forth because he didn't want to make things worse. But he said after he did it, obviously it was voted first team all conference and it worked out. But it was a tough year. I made a lot of people unhappy, I would say.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, the best players play, and
Yep. Yeah.
the goal is to win, and that's all there is to it. And that group of seniors you talked about, Casey Finch, Denise Rasmussen, they had pretty high expectations all around, and the spotlight was on them, I think, even more than it was the boys team that year, because they had a lot of experience. A lot of them played as younger, in those younger grades, and I don't know, what were you guys, like 16-7 that year or something like
Yeah,
that?
I know we finished third in the conference. At the time, both Forest City and Garner were very good. They both went to state, I believe, in different classes. So there was a couple of teams that were competitive, but yeah, we finished the season strong. Like you said, they had high expectations. They had been playing basketball together for a long time.
Yeah.
Beth Rasmussen had been coaching them, and yeah, they were expected to do probably better than what we did. But things don't always play out the way they're supposed to.
That's where the guard play between you and Angie Pritchard and Amber Halick. Those years you guys all kind of mixed in there, just scrappy. Always getting in there and getting steals and playing good defense is what I remember.
Yeah, speaking of steals, one game that I remember is Belmont again. Going into the fourth quarter, I think we were down maybe 15. And Chelsea Doherty she was young at the time too. She was my class, but she turned the ball over probably 8 times in that fourth quarter on our press. And for some reason they didn't take her out. She was young and got frustrated. But we picked their pocket just time after time in that fourth quarter and ended up coming back and winning. I've watched that game, it's on VHS because we didn't have anything else then, but I've watched that game a time or two, and it's pretty comical how it went down. It's hard to believe we came back and won, but yeah, that's one of the ones that I remember most. And like you said, we were scrappy. We struggled at times to shoot the ball. We weren't super consistent. I wouldn't have ever considered myself a shooter. I would have much preferred to drive short jumpers or drive to the hoop, but yeah, shooting the ball percentage wise, we probably weren't outstanding as a team.
You just described the boys team as well. We scored 40. We were like, we have a chance.
Yeah,
that was about all we needed some nights.
Yep. Well, that was kind of Coach Drake's philosophy. Like I don't remember if you guys pressed too. I think you did.
On occasion, it wasn't a lot, but we would throw it in there just to change it up and put a little pressure on them. But we were more of the half court offense.
Yep.
So we'd grind it out. Yep. And we'd lose games 40-37. We'd score 52 and win by 12. It just, you never knew on each night what was going to happen. But yeah, what got me was my sophomore and junior year. I was in the gym all summer shooting. Like I was there 4 mornings a week shooting all the time. And my junior year, I think I made like 4 3-pointers the whole season. Then my senior season, I focused more on getting ready for football. And so I didn't go to the gym more than like twice that entire summer. And I'm pretty sure I was like 3rd in the conference in threes my senior year. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense that you put all the time and effort in, nothing happens. Then I decide to
do nothing. And
then everything went really well. I was like, that's not a good lesson to teach the kids. But yeah, it works.
It works.
Yeah. All right. Your junior year, 16.9 points a game. You were out quite a bit that season. I have in my notes. Correct me if I'm wrong. You guys just went 3-17 that year. Had some injuries overall. Your first team all conference again, and that would have been Coach Drake's last season as head coach for girls, correct?
I think Kevin. I think it was Kevin's first season.
Okay, I have it
It's a,
as your senior year, but I could be off a year.
uh,
I talked to Kevin like every other day during football season. I probably should have run this by him, but I didn't.
I'm, like you said, I had a knee injury and was out a lot of the season. I tore my ACL early, and I was kind of stupid, and I rehabbed a little bit and came back for, part of the second half of the season. But I'm pretty sure it was Kevin
Okay.
at that time.
Yeah, I might be off a year.
Yeah.
Because his senior year was my senior year was just boys for him. And so my junior year, your sophomore year would have been his last year. So you're right. Yeah, junior year would have been Kevin. And so you had him 2 years, right?
Yep.
Okay, you're right. Yep. There you go. We're getting old. That's
Yeah, I
right.
know. But yeah, my junior year, I mean, obviously being out was beyond frustrating. But it was beyond frustrating for a lot of reasons, like we've talked about that group of Casey Finch and Denise and Brittany. Well, they all graduated. So it was me and Mary had played a little bit prior. But we didn't have much experience, kind of similar to what happened in softball. So it was going to be a frustrating year regardless. Being out and sitting and watching was even worse. But yeah, I mean, you can see by the record 3-17. Obviously, it was not a great season. I didn't get to play a lot, but not only did I go down, but Mary Mallon also tore her ACL.
Oh yeah.
And then so did Emily Pritchard.
Oh man, I completely forgot about that. It was like all within a short time.
Yes, it was like within a week and a half of games, right early in the season. And yeah, we after that point they struggled because the three of us probably would have been the three primary guards trying to get the ball up the court.
Yeah. You don't have a ball handler.
Yeah, so it was a struggle. It was a struggle.
Again, going back to my sister's playing days, that was their basketball career as well, was they didn't have ball handlers, and you'd watch games, they'd get beat 56-4 and they got it across half court 6 times. Sometimes teams weren't even pressing. That was just they couldn't get it. They couldn't dribble. And I'll talk to her about that once in a while, and she goes, "Yeah, it was ugly. Wasn't good."
I remember watching a few of those games, and it was pretty brutal to watch.
They had Julie Ridema who could do everything, and then they moved Ella.
Yes, and even when she was here, it was her and not a whole lot else besides her. So
yeah. All right, let's go to senior year. You became the first girls basketball player in the 5-on-5 era to score 1,000 career points. Do you remember that night at Forest City?
Yeah, well, it was against Forest City, but it was
at home.
It was in Britt.
Okay. My research is bad tonight.
Yeah, no, that's okay. It was senior night. That's why I remember it, and it was also a pretty big deal because not too long before then I had committed to Waldorf. So I knew a lot of the people from Forest City already. Some of the players from Forest City ended up becoming my teammates at Waldorf, and then both my softball and basketball coach were in attendance that night.
Oh, nice.
So it was a pretty cool experience, and to do it on senior night was awesome. Obviously injuries kind of plagued my career a little bit, so would have been awesome to do it earlier, but to do it on senior night and to do it against Forest City was a really neat experience for me. So
cool. Yeah, again, I thought I had it as at Forest City, but close enough. You guys lost in the first round of districts to Norris Springs Rock Falls in overtime. You had 24 points in that game. Was that one of those we could have won it type of games in regulation? Had chances?
Oh yeah, we definitely had chances. I fouled out of that game. I remember that. So I remember being on the bench in overtime and just watching it kind of slip away and knowing my career was coming to an end. So it was a sad deal for sure.
If you guys
we were definitely, in my opinion, we were better than NSRF, but just didn't show up that night. So
Yeah. Do you think you would have done well if you won that game? Did you have a chance to go a little bit farther, you think, or do you remember?
oh, I don't even remember who else would have been next.
The
I'm
paper
not
never
sure.
says that, too
No, I
much.
know. Yeah.
Especially if you lose, they don't talk about who the team that beat you is going
No.
to play, so you don't get a lot of that information. But yeah, you were first team all conference for the fourth straight time. And I said earlier, kind of bragging on you, that's, you're a future Hall of Famer. 4-time first team all conference in basketball, I think alone is like worthy of a nod there. That's pretty rare to happen. And you led the conference in scoring that year as well. Talk quick about just overall your basketball career.
Well, like I just said, obviously it would have been great had I not had the knee injury my junior year. But I was lucky. I was lucky to get to play as a freshman, to get to play with that group of the Casey, Amber, Angie, Denise. That was a really fun couple years of basketball. They were great to play with. Coach Drake was fantastic. He really helped me grow as a person. Playing as a freshman, I had to grow up really quick.
Yeah.
I didn't get to have that normal freshman experience, I would say. He had sat me down before that freshman year and kind of challenged me to take on a leadership role. Well, I'm this freshman on this team of juniors that have been playing together for years, and it was hard. But I loved it. We talked about the Hall of Fame earlier and how that 1980 team went in as a state championship team. And obviously, I didn't get to enjoy those experiences. I had plenty of personal accolades, which are great, but I would have traded all of those to have the experience like they got to have, or some of those late 2010-ish, 2015, I don't know, whatever.
2011 and 12, and
Yeah,
then
right
just
around there.
yeah.
I would have loved to have those experiences, to have the state championships and the team experiences and the team success. But overall, obviously, I was super lucky, super blessed to play with a lot of great people, to be coached by Coach Drake. Coach Rasmussen was an assistant for a while, and then Kevin. It was a big change from Coach Drake to Coach Wilson. Completely different personalities.
Yeah.
I mean, you know both of them. You played for them. Coach Wilson is as laid back as they come, and Coach Drake is the complete opposite, or was the complete opposite. So that was a big change for me, going from Coach Drake. I probably thrived in that environment more than I thrived in the laid back Coach Wilson style, just personal preference. But so it was a big change, but overall it's a great career. The town of Britt and Kanawha, the West Hancock community is always so supportive. And I think that's one of the things I remember most, is just, even though, that my junior year we weren't great, or my senior year, we were average, just above average, people still came to cheer us on.
Oh, the gym
And
was packed. I
yes.
mean, it was literally full almost every single night.
Yep.
Whether it was Central of Fenton or Forest City,
Yeah.
would
Yeah,
show
it
up.
didn't matter. It didn't
Yep.
matter. So I think that, that part, those memories are great. But yeah, overall, obviously it would have been nice to not have the injuries. But great career. Thoroughly enjoyed my time as a West Hancock basketball player. Some of my friends now like to give me a hard time because my first couple years we always went by egals.
Yep.
And that, thank goodness that changed, because I don't know why they like to give me a hard time for that. So
Yeah.
I'm glad we've switched to Eagles.
Yep.
But
I don't know if you know this, but the old mat that went against the wall underneath the stage,
yeah,
that red and white mat, that's in my garage.
is it nice?
I
Nice.
bought it at a garage sale for like $75 when they were trying to clear out some storage. And I go into that gym now, I'm back home visiting, and I'm like, this gym is awesome for a small school. But I loved our old mats, the old floor with like the 80s logo on it,
Yes.
wooden bleachers where they just had to put duct tape on it every year to keep them from falling apart. And like our gym was like that old school, kind of dark gym, and I loved playing in that gym for some reason. And now it's great and modern, but I'd
Yeah,
take what we
it's
had.
definitely improved, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Although, you talk about our gym then being old and dark, and it wasn't the worst one, because at that time we were still playing in the WCLTs and the
Yeah.
CWLs, and their gyms where the bleachers were like on the court.
Well, then
You
they
had
had a
restraining
smaller court
lines.
and a restraining line with the
Yes.
smallest court in the history of the world. Yeah.
Yes.
That's
So
interesting nights in those gyms too.
yes, yep,
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely.
But
All right. Well, I'm gonna get some more sponsors, and we're gonna talk about what you're doing at Upper Iowa. The Jay Hiscock State Farm Team in Britt is a proud supporter of West Hancock and the Sanger Legacy Fund. They can help you with all your insurance needs, including auto, home, life, farm, business, and renters. And I am personally vouching for Jay. I'm switching to him as we speak for homeowners and auto insurance now that my uncle's retired from the insurance business. For a free quote or review, give Jay or Lindsay a call at 843-3563. Go Eagles, and thanks to Jay. He's been sponsoring almost all of these podcasts. And then I want to thank Nick Schmidt for sponsoring another podcast. He's a 2000 West Hancock grad and just simply wanted to give back to the Sanger Legacy Fund. So thanks to Nick Schmidt for sponsoring. And Jim Diemer and the Britt Vet Clinic is also long-term sponsoring the podcast. They're located in downtown Britt, and Jim's now a Hall of Famer himself for the 73 football team. Jim and his team are there for all your small animal vet needs and swine vet services. Call them at 843-3416 or email the Britt Vet Clinic at brittvetclinic@gmail.com. And then thanks as always to the Britt Car Truck Bike and Tractor Night Cruise for sponsoring over 30 episodes of the podcast to promote their great events. Jared Wingert and company run these events. The first one was on July 20th, and we had August 17th, and now there's one coming up on the 21st of September. They're all on Wednesday nights, so it's easy to get to. He also owns Mojo Productions and does a great job giving back to the communities of Britt and West Hancock. This 5th annual event has free kids activities. Trophies are presented for all categories, and a $1,000 award is given out at each show. You can't beat free admission and great food and drink from Britt vendors only. Check out the video that he has on BrittCarCruise.com. And then some guy named Eric Kroll is sponsoring the podcast with his ag performance company that he works for. Ag Performance is the leader in conventional seed throughout the Midwest. They also have a product called Xylem Plus that is fighting against fusarium, stalk rot, white mold, and other vascular diseases. Contact Eric at 515-341-3361 if you're looking for a higher net return on your fields. That's Eric Kroll with Ag Performance, 341-3361. So you said you went to Waldorf and played softball and basketball. You did all 4 years, both sports, correct?
yes, correct.
Yep.
Correct.
How'd that go?
Basketball, I didn't start as a freshman, but I probably the first or second person off the bench, got a lot of playing time. Overall, I had a great career playing basketball there. The legendary Denny Jerome was my coach, who just last year finally retired as AD.
I was gonna ask if he was still around. I'm sure he's still involved though.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. He was inducted in the Hall of Fame though last year, since he'd finally given it up.
Mhm.
Just an outstanding coach. Very lucky to have had the chance to play for him. What was cool about playing at Waldorf, both in basketball and softball at the time, is both of our rosters were just loaded with north central Iowa girls, and then some southern Minnesota girls too, but a lot of local girls, people that I had played against in high school. It was really cool to then become their teammates.
Yep.
Basketball wise, we were right around middle of the pack in the conference most years. My sophomore year, I tore my ACL, my other ACL. So I was out for part of that season. So that was, frustrating, but I was lucky enough. I scored 1,000 points in basketball at Waldorf. Overall had a great career. And then softball, team wise, we were outstanding. That was, some of the most successful team experiences I've had in my athletic career. We were conference champs several of the years that I was there, either regular season and or postseason tournament. My junior year, we qualified for the national tournament, got to go to Alabama, do the whole nationals deal, which was awesome. So I was very lucky to play with some really talented pitchers in the, Chelsea Doherty's, Marissa Jensen's, who went on to be All-Americans. And thanks to them, and talented rosters, we had a lot of success softball wise. And 3 of my 4 years, Denny Gilbertson was the coach who
Yeah, that's what
getting,
I was trying to think of his name.
yeah, and he's getting inducted into the Waldorf Hall of Fame this year.
Nice.
So yeah, two Hall of Fame coaches that I got to play for. And my junior year, the one year that I didn't have Denny, was Coach Crystal Wolcott, who's now at Mankato State. Had played at Waldorf, was a Waldorf alum herself, came in and with totally different approach than Denny, led us to the national tournament, and then she got the job up at Mankato. And Denny decided to come back. He took a year off, did some insurance stuff, and decided he missed it, and ended up coming back. So, I had great experiences in Forest City. It was nice to be close to home, so my family and friends and people from Britt could come watch. And then, like I said, I got to play with a lot of people who had been enemies, rivals prior to that. So it was a great experience.
Yeah, it doesn't take long after you get out of high school to realize, it didn't really matter that, we still joke like, oh, we got to beat Garner in football or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's just fun to have something to talk about and
Yes.
have those common conversations about, your glory days.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool. So let's talk Upper Iowa here as we're wrapping this up. You said you've been there since what, 2018?
Yep.
You are the senior woman administrator, the senior associate athletic director of external affairs. Did I get that correct?
You did. It's a
Something like that.
long title. I hate having to write it out.
So are you kind of the second in command then behind the AD?
Yep. So I'm second in command behind Rick Hartzell, who is a Clemmy, Iowa native. So he likes to talk about the North Iowa, all the rivalries over there, and
The E-Gals, yeah.
Yes, the E-Gals. His sister still lives in Garner, so we joke quite a bit about the Britt Garner rivalries and just North Iowa in general. We like to tell everybody around here that we're from God's country.
Yep, I tell people that all the time.
Yep.
And
So,
it's cool because Upper Iowa and Britt have always had kind of a pipeline. I'm sure you saw the Sangers, Jim Timmerman, Steve Everett, Denny Brum. There was tons of teachers that kind of came in the 60s and 50s even. And, they talk about Upper Iowa, they talk about Britt. That was kind of hand in hand. So you're kind of the opposite where you went from Britt to Upper Iowa. Do you ever hear those names or people?
Yes, all the time. We talk about it often. We're getting ready for our Hall of Fame banquet here on Friday night. So, several of those names that you just mentioned, Bob Sanger is obviously in our Hall of Fame here at Upper Iowa. Denny Brum is in the Hall of Fame. Bob's brother is in the Hall of Fame. So there's several. Jim Timmerman's brother is in the Hall of Fame. So there are several of those connections. And Denny Brum couldn't be more excited to be coming back on Friday to celebrate our new inductees. But that Britt Upper Iowa connection is pretty special. People here like to talk about it, and I know people in Britt, the ones that have gone to Britt, love to talk about it as well.
Yep.
I know one that you didn't mention, Ron Meyer.
Oh, yeah.
He's an Upper Iowa grad, and he was my dad's assistant wrestling coach when they won that championship back in the 70s. So it's cool. He makes it to quite a few of our wrestling meets now. He lives in the Sumner area, so see him regularly. And it was fun to meet him a couple years ago and kind of put those connections together.
Yeah, I got his contact information to do that podcast.
Yeah.
A year and a half ago almost now. And I was on the phone with him trying to prep him for it and stuff. And he asked me what kind of car we drove. And I said, well, we actually just bought a new minivan because we have kids. And he's like, I actually am looking for a minivan. And so we talked for maybe 20 minutes about minivans instead of talking about the 73 football team. And to me, that was like strange for a minute. But then I'm like, it's just kind of cool to connect with people and, however it may be or whatever you talk about. But yeah, Ron Meyer and I have a minivan connection. I meant to ask him at the Hall of Fame if he ended up buying one. I forgot to ask him.
He must not like to talk about the 73 football team, because at the Hall of Fame banquet the other night, the 73 team got inducted, and he, comes up to give the speech, and he just talked about wrestling the whole time.
Yeah, it was fun. It was great. I think,
Yeah,
yeah,
it was
he was
great.
kind of involved with two of those, so I'm sure that's
Yes.
easy to confuse. But
Yep.
so you are included. You work with the development process, alumni relations, sponsorships. We were talking off air about podcast sponsorships and stuff. You do it with the events, vendor contracts, and then the part I want to talk about here, besides the fact that you were the administrator for women's basketball, softball, spirit, and shotgun sports. Explain. Shotgun and spirit sports.
So
I copy and pasted that in from your school's
for my
website.
bio,
Yeah.
well, spirit is cheer and dance. We have a cheerleading program, and then we've got a dance program.
My mind went elsewhere.
Yeah, right.
Thinking the Hy-Vee spirit area, yeah.
So we kind of put them together. So I'm the administrator for them. And then shotgun sports, we added here a couple years ago. Kind of a new up and coming sport. It's essentially trap shooting. So at the high school level in Iowa, that's kind of taken off.
Yeah.
So trap shooting, but at the college level, we call it shotgun sports because there's 5 different disciplines that they shoot. So there's trap, and there's doubles trap, and there's skeet, and double ski, I don't know, and then there's one other that I can't remember, but so it just encompasses a few different shooting events.
Yeah, I saw that and I'm like, that's interesting.
Right.
How do you prep yourself for being the administrator for a sport like that you probably didn't have a whole lot of prior knowledge base of?
No, so our coach is a first-time coach. She's young. She came in, she had shot in college, so she had that experience, but had never coached before. So with her, she's helped teach me about the sport, and there's been a lot of learning just across the board as far as what their needs are as a program, and what campus will allow, because obviously they don't necessarily want their guns on campus. So we've had to develop a lot of different policies and procedures for that. So working with her to kind of get an understanding of what they need. And then I've helped her more on the coaching side as far as budgets and just roster management and team handbooks and all of the other side of things. So we kind of work together to make things work.
Yeah. And one thing I didn't put in the notes, but it just popped in my head. Since COVID, has eligibility been a nightmare? Figuring out how many years of eligibility everyone has left, how many red shirts or gray shirts. That's got to be just a craziness right now.
I am so glad that I am not our compliance director, and I don't really have to deal with it aside from helping the coaches that I work with more directly determine whether their kids are going to take those extra years. Because, if a which would have been a senior decides to stick around for their super senior year, that impacts our scholarship dollars. And if they stick around an extra year that we didn't plan on and they keep their scholarship, well, then we can't bring in a recruit to, on that money. So it's been a nightmare for sure.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Like I'm a Central College grad, so they have 150 players on their squad. And right now, I think this freshman class is like the first class that COVID really isn't affecting.
Yeah.
I think, or maybe it's the second class, but all those other, there's 3-4 groups of guys that I'm like, how do you know who's a fifth year, who's a senior? What does a junior even mean a junior anymore? I don't know. It's just got to be.
No, yeah, it's a mess for sure. And then just COVID in general was a mess. I'm so glad that we've moved past the like regular and routine testing and all the other protocols and cautionary things we had to do. College sports, it was tough for a couple years. It's nice. It finally feels a little more back to normal. Obviously, the compliance side is not. It'll take another year or two to kind of get past that, but
we'll be there.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. Well, we're going to wrap things up here. I again want to thank the 18 sponsors for giving to the Sanger Legacy Fund for tonight's episode with Sarah. And again, episode 50. Just want to thank everybody again for watching. Just crazy that, this idea kind of came to be a couple years ago, and 50 episodes later, we're here, and I have tons more booked out and a lot more ideas for future episodes, and I'm going to keep doing it as long as people want to watch it. So thanks again for watching. Next up on the podcast, I have a Super Bowl champion. Josh Hartman was one of the head athletic trainers for the Denver Broncos when Peyton Manning and those guys won the Super Bowl. I think it was Super Bowl 50 actually. And then I have a couple guys that were classmates of my sister, John Charbonneau and Rolly Zamago. That's going to be a fun one. And then Kerry Van Winkle was the football coach back in Kanawha back in the 70s. And then he won a couple state titles at Roland Story. And then that'll roll right into, I do a couple football playoff podcasts with Kevin and Jay every year. And so that'll be before we know it. Week 3 of football season's already coming up. And then in December, I'm doing one with several elementary teachers, Mrs. Kitchen, Mrs. Savoy, Mrs. Hildman, Mrs. McCauley, and Mrs. Farrell. I assume you had several of them as teachers.
Yes, several of them.
I can't wait.
Yeah, it takes me back to elementary days. That'll be a fun one. They were outstanding teachers.
Yeah, we're going non-sports this time, and I can't wait for it. So, all right, as we wrap it up, is there anything that we missed? Anything that you were thinking about that you didn't say when you maybe had a chance to, and now you do?
Well, one thing I'd like to add, went to the Hall of Fame banquet, and Candace Wilson was inducted. And she talked about the opportunities to be a 4-sport athlete, being from a small school. And I, like that, I'd like to echo that I just feel so lucky to have had those opportunities. I'm so glad that I was a 4-sport athlete, kind of 5 sports with golf.
I was just gonna say,
yeah.
5.
But just being able to be a 4-sport athlete for 4 years, you don't see that as often now, and that it's not necessarily right or wrong, but I would encourage any of those athletes that are trying to specialize. I think you miss out on a lot when you choose to specialize. There's obviously pros and cons, so I just super lucky to have been able to do all 4. It's awesome that small schools get to do that. And I was lucky to play with a lot of really great athletes and play for some great coaches. So shout out to all of those people for making my career what it was.
Yep, definitely. And there's, we always say no better place to do it than at West Hancock. It's been a pretty cool place to be a part of. And I always say Britt people love to tell non-Britt people about Britt stuff. So
that is true.
Love it. So I can't get enough of it. But all right, Sarah, well, I appreciate you coming on, and thanks again for everything, and go Peacocks.
Thanks for having me.
Go Eagles.
Go Peacocks, go Eagles. That's right.